This is Greg Hansen's Video Notebook, brought to you by Albertsons. I'm Star Sports Editor Ryan Finley, joined by Greg Hansen. Greg, let's talk about U of A football. The Wildcats are in the middle of training camp. And as we talk about their chances for 2014, so much of how they fare is dependent on transfers and guys who started at different schools. I mean, look no further than quarterback. Quarterback, they have Jesse Scroggins, who started at USC. They had Gerard Randall, who started at LSU. They had Connor Brewer, who started at Texas. I mean, odds are their starting quarterback is going to be a guy who started someplace else. You, Greg, have a great grasp of history. When we look at U of A football players through the years who started someplace else, where do we start?
You start when Tony Mason actually was the head coach at Arizona in the late 70s, and they went into the Pac-10. He brought in 6 future NFL players from like Purdue, Oklahoma State, Cincinnati, and they were high draft picks. That's how Arizona was respectable when they got into the Pac-10, because Tony Mason had rated those schools and brought those guys. And then Dick Tommey did something pretty similar when he came in '87. He was resourceful, just as Rich Rod is, and maybe more so, although the current 8 guys, second chance players that Rich Rod has right now, it'd be tough to go beyond those guys.
That's interesting. When you talk about, getting a transfer is such a two-headed coin here. A guy, you're either discovering a guy who didn't quite have a fit or a chance at a better school, or you bring in a guy who's just going to be trouble. We can talk about Lewis Holmes for an hour and a half,
right,
and how the recruitment of Lewis Holmes, who was a junior college guy, sort of hurt, I think, Arizona's progression. What is probably the best example of a good transfer and the best example of a bad transfer?
Okay, here's one. When Tommey came, he recruited a guard that no one had ever heard of, who had played at Pittsburgh State and then transferred to Taft College in L.A.
Wait, Taft is an upgrade from Pittsburgh State?
Yeah, that's where he went.
Okay.
His name is Rick Warren.
Yeah.
And in 1989, his second year as a starter, he ran the Fumble-Rooski for a touchdown to beat number 11 Illinois. 3 weeks later, he ran the Fumble-Rooski to the 1-yard line to upset number 15 USC. Rick Warren, out of nowhere, changes 2 games for Arizona and puts Dick Tommey on a really good path. One guy like that.
One guy. This is Greg Hansen's Video Notebook, brought to you by Albertsons. Ryan Finley here with Greg Hansen. Now, Greg, for every Rick Warren, there's a guy who comes in with the burden of expectations. Sometimes if a guy's a transfer, it's because he's been kicked out or asked to leave his previous school. Name a transfer through the years who may have hurt the program more than he helped it.
Here's one who didn't work out. When SMU imploded, after the Eric Dickerson stuff, all their players were available. And the first guy there was Dick Tommey. Sports Illustrated the next week ran a photo of all the coaches in their locker room, and there was Mark Lunsford, Tommey's top recruiter, was sitting next to their quarterback, Bobby Waters. He comes to Arizona. Arizona had no quarterback, none. He breaks his thumb in the 3rd game against UCLA. He's out. They started true freshman, and they only won 4 games that year. That one didn't work out.
No. And then you look at sort of guys through the years, Greg, who, maybe exceed expectations. Is there kind of a nobody guy who has come to Arizona and really stepped up from another school?
Willie Walker, who went to Desert View High School, he was a lineman. He wasn't recruited out of Desert View. He goes to Eastern New Mexico University, plays there 1 or 2 years. Dick Tommey finds him, brings him home, starts for Arizona 3 years in a row on the Desert Swarm teams.
Wow.
A really good player.
Wow. Greg, I'm going to put you on the spot here before we go. We talked about kind of the 8 or 9 core guys who Arizona has who started someplace else. Of those core guys, who do you think is going to be the biggest impact player this year?
Devante Neal.
Yeah?
Notre Dame. Unless a quarterback emerges and is consistently good, and that would trump everything.
Sure.
But Devante Neal is a special talent, I think.
Yeah, he played as a true freshman on a really, really good Notre Dame team, played for a national championship.
True. And then they have the 2 defensive lineman transfers from LSU and Boise State. If those guys perform at a Pac-12 level, Arizona would be a different team. If they're not, they're not going to have a very good defensive line.
Right. Aren't you excited? Football starts in 3 weeks here, Greg?
August 28th, which is a Thursday night, there are 14 televised college games on TV.
Wow.
On that Thursday.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, football season's right around the corner. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Well, that'll do it for this episode of Greg Hansen's Video Notebook, brought to you by Albertsons. For Greg Hansen, I'm Ryan Finley. We'll see you next time.